Thank you for choosing Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. This video will outline its setup process. Before we get started, there are a few important items to review. The setup process will require changes at multiple points in your company's system and network security settings. You must have the following privileges to successfully configure Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. Local System Administrator Access, Network Administrator Access, Administrator Access within Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS, and access to the Amazon Web Services console. This may require participation from multiple people within your organization. You or your team will then have to complete the following steps. Go to the AWS Marketplace and search for Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. Select View Purchase Options, and if necessary, click Subscribe. Once subscribed to Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS, click Set Up Your Account, and a Setup Wizard is launched. The Setup Wizard will guide you through the process from start to finish. Specific details, architecture diagrams, and IT requirements are also provided here. First, enter your company information into the wizard so we can be aware of who is registering and onboarding. You'll need your Ansys customer ID and address. The next screen provides the prerequisites for setting up Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. Your local IT administrator will need to follow these prerequisites to prepare your local environment. They will need to configure Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP, for querying and authenticating access to your Active Directory. You will also need a service account with the ability to join machines to the domain, as well as create users, groups, and machines within an organizational unit. It's recommended that you create a separate organizational unit, or OU, specifically for the operations carried out by Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. On your Active Directory server, create an organizational unit to be used for Ansys Gateway operations. During the setup process, 2 security groups will be automatically created in this OU. Prepare a server to host the Ansys Gateway AD connector service. The requirements for this server are documented in the wizard. Of note are communications on ports 16402, 389, 3268, 443, 22, and 445. Create a secure and private connection between your local network and the AWS Virtual Private Cloud. Also, ensure that the licensed server to be used for Ansys application licenses is reachable by the VPC. We will not be covering this in the video, but it may be required if you will be accessing on-premises resources from within the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS environment. Now that you have confirmed prerequisites are in place, you can check the box to confirm you have completed all prerequisite steps. When prompted, specify domain information to allow Ansys Gateway to communicate with your local environment. Once submitted, a custom configuration file is generated for your company. This will be used in the next step. You can obtain the organizational unit distinguished name from the AD server. Within the Active Directory, open the OU properties. Click the Attribute Editor tab, then select the Distinguished Name attribute and copy the value. You may want to print or save the installation instructions that appear in the next step. Download the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS AD connector package and the configuration file. You can copy these to the AWS machine you have selected to be your Ansys Gateway powered by AWS AD connector server. Install and configure the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS AD connector service. This includes applying the custom configuration file generated in the previous step and creating a domain join user for Ansys Gateway powered by AWS to use, as outlined in Step 3, Item 10. Once the service is running, your company's Active Directory starts synchronizing with the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS back end. To install, Create a directory on the AD connector server. In this case, we have created a folder named HEW on the C drive and save the files to that directory. Next, extract the _AD connector service zip file. Copy config.json into the extracted _AD connector service directory. You will need to install a certificate for client authentication. That process is not covered in this video. You will then need to obtain the thumbprint of the certificate by double-clicking on it and then viewing the Details tab. You will now install the AD connector service. This can be carried out using Windows PowerShell, as shown here. Once the installation process is complete, you can browse to see Program Data, Ansys, Gateway, to view a log and see the behavior of the service. On the AD server, add administrator and standard user accounts to the security groups created within the organizational unit. Next, you'll need to sign into Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS, with the Tenant Administrator account credentials in order to specify your company's AWS account information and add availability zones. Let's take a look at how to complete each of these steps. To enable Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS, to request resources from your virtual private cloud, you must add your company's AWS account information to Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. If your company has more than one AWS account, multiple accounts can be added. Once an account has been added, you must create a shared role with specific access policies in the AWS Identity and Access Management, or IAM, console. To specify AWS account information, on the main toolbar, click the gear icon to display the administration menu. In the navigation pane, select AWS Accounts. Then click Add Account. On the Add an AWS Account page, specify the following information. The AWS Account ID. This is a 12-digit number which can be found in the AWS console. Give the account a name to help easily identify it in Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS. Then click Add AWS Account. The account is added to the AWS Accounts list. You now need to allow Ansys Gateway, powered by AWS, to access your AWS resources. In the table row, click Grant Access. A set of instructions is displayed. It includes an AWS CloudFormation template for creating a stack. The template contains information that is specific to your company. Click Download Template File. This template file has been generated specifically for your company. It contains information that will be used to create a role with required access policies in the AWS Identity and Access Management console. Open the AWS CloudFormation console. Create a new stack by selecting the Create Stack button. On the Specify Template page, choose a stack template by selecting the options Template is Ready and Upload a template file. Click Choose File to select the template file, then click Next. On the Specify Stack Details page, enter a name for the stack and click Next. Then configure the stack options as desired and click Next. We can review the details of the stack on the Review page. On the Review page, in the Capabilities section, check the box to acknowledge that AWS CloudFormation might create IAM resources with custom names and click Submit. The status of the stack will now appear as Create in Progress. You can click the refresh button to update the status. When completed, the stack status will show as Create Complete. You can review the stack operations under the Events tab. Once the stack is created, you will need to go to the AWS IAM console to select the newly created Amazon Resource Name, or ARN. In the IAM dashboard, click Roles from the navigation list on the left side of the window. You will now see the newly added role in the list. Click the role name and copy the ARN information. This will need to be entered into the Role ARN field in the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS setup page. Please wait about 10 minutes before applying this ARN to the Role ARN field. Then click Submit. You will see that your account has been successfully added to the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS Accounts page. Before project spaces and resources can be created in Ansys Gateway powered by AWS, a tenant administrator must specify the availability zones from which computing and networking resources can be provisioned. When an availability zone is added to the configuration, it appears in the Availability Zone drop-down list when administrators are creating project spaces and resources. To add an availability zone, click the gear icon to display the administration menu. In the navigation pane, select Availability Zones. On the Availability Zones page, click Add Availability Zone. Keep the Add Availability Zone dialog open while you open another browser tab. In the new browser tab, go to the AWS portal and go to the VPC Management Console. In the AWS portal, under Virtual Private Cloud, select Subnets. You should add an availability zone in Ansys Gateway powered by AWS for each of the subnets listed in your VPC. In Ansys Gateway powered by AWS, in the Add Availability Zone dialog, specify the following settings. The name of the availability zone as it will appear in Ansys Gateway powered by AWS. The AWS account to which the virtual network is scoped. See AWS accounts in this guide. The AWS region from which resources will be provisioned. The name or ID of the virtual private cloud into which resources will be deployed, as defined in the AWS portal. The name or ID of the subnet within the specified VPC into which resources will be deployed, as defined in the AWS portal. If required tags are displayed, specify their values. Tag availability depends on the tags defined for availability zones on the Administration Tags page. Click Add. The availability zone is added to the list and will now be available when administrators create project spaces and resources. Repeat the above steps to add an availability zone for each subnet in your VPC. To test all of our onboarding steps for functionality, we will now create a project space and a resource. A project space is a group of cloud-based resources. Resource types include virtual desktops, HPC clusters, and file storage servers. A project space is often configured to support specific activities or workflows, or serve a specific group of users. Tenant administrators can create project spaces for users to access. To create a project space, go to the Ansys Gateway powered by AWS homepage. Then select New Project Space. Enter a name to identify the project space. This should be a meaningful name that will help users quickly find the project space and determine if it is suitable for their needs. For example, the name might indicate the intended purpose of the project space, key information about the types of resources it contains, or the intended user base. The description can provide additional details about a project space to help users determine if it is suitable for what they want to accomplish. The time zone determines the local time to be displayed on virtual desktops and the timestamp of events and files. Let's take a moment to explain shutdown timers. A shutdown timer stops a running resource, causing it to become stopped. Resources in the stopped state do not incur charges except for the underlying storage cost. A stopped resource will still be visible in the project space and can be started again. The option labeled Shutdown Timer if no user is online sets the maximum number of minutes that resources can remain running when no user is signed in. Shutdown timers can help reduce unnecessary usage charges, as resources that are left running continue to accrue charges even if they are not being used. Shutdown timer if only disconnected users will determine the maximum number of minutes that resources can remain running when users are signed in but disconnected from any resources in the project space. Availability zones allow you to specify the regional cloud data center from which resources will be provisioned. If your administrator has added required tags, enter their values. To apply a custom tag, click Apply Custom Tags, then select the custom tag to apply. Tag availability depends on whether project space tags have been defined in the Administration Tags page. Click Create Project Space. The project space is created and is ready to be configured. Next, we will test creation of a virtual desktop in this project space. A virtual desktop has the functionality of a physical computer, but is not tied to a physical machine. It functions as a virtual computer system with its own CPU, memory, network interface, and storage. You can add a virtual desktop to a project space if you are a tenant administrator or have admin permission in the project space. When you create a virtual desktop, you will specify the availability zone, providing the hardware, the operating system, any applications to be installed, the hardware type, the disk size and type, and tags. You can specify these properties individually or use a predefined template to automatically populate property values with those defined in the template. Both methods are covered in the instructions below. Once a virtual desktop has been created, users can connect to it to launch a virtual desktop session. To create a virtual desktop, open the project space to which you want to add the new resource. On the project space page, select New Resource, Virtual Desktop to launch the creation wizard. On the details screen, specify the availability zone where the compute resource will be provisioned. On the template screen, choose whether to use a predefined template or not. For this example, we will not be using the listed template. Select the desired operating system type, Windows or Linux, then select the desired OS image. An OS image is a template for creating new virtual desktop instances. It is a file that contains a virtual disk that contains a bootable operating system. On the application screen, select and configure the applications to install on the virtual desktop. Click Add Application. A list of applications is displayed. Select an application in the list. The application is added to the left panel. If applicable, specify configuration settings. For licensed Ansys applications, for example, you must specify information about your license server and license details. For information on available options, see Managing Application Licenses in Ansys Help. Continue adding applications as desired. In addition to the main application, consider installing any third-party applications that may help you perform your work, for example, Mozilla Firefox or Notepad++. On the hardware screen, select the desired virtual hardware configuration for the virtual machine. Each hardware configuration has an hourly usage cost associated with it. The virtual hardware features and functions correspond to the hardware available on a physical host. Hardware configurations may include a hyper-threading or simultaneous multi-threading option. Both options describe the same technology. Hyper-threading is Intel's brand name for the technology and is therefore the option shown for Intel hardware. Some instance types are only available in certain regions or zones. The prices shown in the table reflect on-demand pricing in the selected region. On the storage screen, create the desired disk configuration for the operating system, and optionally specify additional storage if needed. Note that pricing varies for different disk configurations. On the tag screen, if tags are available, specify their values. On the review screen, specify a meaningful name for the virtual desktop and optionally a description to provide users with additional information about the resource. Review the virtual desktop configuration. If you need to change a setting, simply navigate back to the screen containing that setting and make the desired change. To save the settings to a template for future reuse, click Save as Template. If you are satisfied with the settings, click Create Virtual Desktop. The virtual desktop is created. This may take a few minutes. A new resource tile then becomes available in the project space. The new resource will go through a few different states before it starts running. Operating system setup and basic installation takes 10 to 15 minutes on average. It may take up to 20 minutes if a GPU driver needs to be installed. Note that this is a rough estimate. Creation time varies depending on a number of factors, some of which may be related to AWS. When the resource is in the running state, users can connect to it to launch a virtual desktop session. When finished in a virtual desktop session, it is recommended to log out to avoid unexpected costs from a system left running when it's not required. You can then stop the VM from the project space. This concludes the guide to setting up Ansys Gateway powered by AWS.